We'll begin this video with an example of economic analysis. So today I'm going to be talking about like a model of a particular market, the market for apartments. So along the way, we will introduce several new ideas and tools of economics. Don't worry if it all goes by rather quickly. This chapter is meant only to provide a quick overview of how these ideas can be used. Later on, we will study them in substantially more detail. So we will be talking about a model where we'll see, what is demand, what is supply, and how that come in equilibrium, what is equilibrium. So all those basics. First, let's understand what is a model. Okay. So, economics proceeds by developing models of social phenomena. By a model, we mean a simplified representation of reality. So, what I meant to say is that जब भी हम बात करते हैं किसी मॉडल की, तो हम मॉडल को आज लेते हैं कि एक बहुत ही सिंपल तरीके से क्या सही है उसको दिखाने के लिए हम एक मॉडल का यूज करते हैं. बेसिकली मेथड ऑफ रिप्रेजेंटेशन कि क्या होता है. So think about how useless a map on a one-to-one basis, how useless it is, So scale would be. So the same is true of an economic model that attempts to describe every aspect of reality. A model's power stems from the elimination of irrelevant detail. So therefore we need to look up to the models more. ठीक है, इसीलिए हम ज़्यादा मॉडल्स के ऊपर एम्फोसाइज करते हैं. यूजुअली हमारी स्टडीज़ में मॉडल्स बहुत ही एक इंटरेस्टिंग एंड यूजफुल पार्ट प्ले करते हैं बिकॉज ये बहुत ईजी होता है समझने के लिए, क्योंकि एक चीज़ है जो रियलिटी में वर्ड्स के थ्रू कई बार नहीं समझ में आती है. सो वी यूज़ फिगर्स इन द डेटा टू गेट इट डन. ओके, सो here in this case also we'll see the models to understand what do we mean to how to correctly analyze the real situations with less logics, with less things. Okay, so therefore it's a representation. Okay, so as I just said, a model's power stems from the elimination of irrelevant detail, which allows the economist to focus on the essential features of the economic reality he or she is attempting to understand. So here we are interested in what determines the price of apartments, because basically into your screens we can look at that we are going to be talking about microeconomics, and very basic thing that we should know about microeconomics, that it is all about the prices. Okay, when we talk about your macroeconomics, it's more about income and employment, the larger problems that exist into the society, into the economy. But when we talk about microeconomics, we are talking about an individual perspective. So in small components we are looking in our economy as. So therefore we will be start our analysis, the models based on the price level. So here we are interested in what determines the price of apartments. So we want to have a simplified description of the apartment market. So we'll be talking about through this model of apartment market. There is a certain art to choosing the right simplifications in building a model. As we already know, we should know this, the art of building a model. So in general, we want to adopt the simplest model that is capable of describing the economic situation we are examining. As I just said, that the model that we are going to be talking about is the market for apartments in a medium-sized Midwestern college town. So in this town, there are two sorts of apartments. There are some that are adjacent to the university and others that are farther away. Farther away, that is दूर हैं. So दो हम लेकर चल रहे हैं, एक जो यूनिवर्सिटी के पास हैं apartments और जो दूर हैं. So you can even relate to it from your zonal life. ऐसा आपके घर के पास भी होता होगा. So there are some that are adjacent to the university and others that are farther away. The adjacent apartments are generally considered to be more desirable by students since they allow easier access to the university. The apartments that are farther away necessitate taking a bus or a long cold bicycle ride. So much students would prefer a nearby apartment if they can afford one. So if you can afford, basically, if you cannot afford, so you have to be like wherever you get the space, you have to live up there. But if you can afford, अगर आप afford कर सकते हैं, आप उसको purchase कर सकते हैं, आपके पास power है pay करने के लिए, so आप उसी में pay करोगे जहाँ पर आपको efficiency and effectiveness दिखेगी. We will think of the apartment as being located in two large rings surrounding the university. The adjacent apartments are in the inner ring while the rest are located in the outer ring. We will focus exclusively on the market for apartments in the inner ring. The outer ring should be interpreted as where people can go who don't find one of the closer apartments. So we'll suppose that there are many apartments available in the outer ring and their price is fixed at some known level. So we will be concerned solely with the determination of the price of the inner ring apartment who gets to live there. So I'm going to be talking about the terms, and I'm even going to write down here like exogenous variable. Okay, and there is one more term that you should know, that is endogenous variable. Okay, so endogenous and exogenous are the two variables that we are going to look up at. Before looking to those terms, let's understand clearly what we are going to be talking about in this example. So an economist would describe the distinction between the prices of the two kinds of apartment in this model that we are looking up by saying that the prices of the outer ring apartment is an exogenous variable while the prices of the inner ring apartment is an endogenous variable. So what I just said is this exogenous variable is basically nothing but the outer ring prices, okay? Price of the outer ring apartments. So price of outer ring apartments, so prices of outer ring apartment is what we are going to be terming as exogenous variable, and when we are going to talk about endogenous, then simply inner ka region ka jo bhi prices hai, that will be your endogenous variable. So this means that the price of the outer ring apartment is taken as determined by factors, so not discussed in this particular model, while the price of the inner ring apartment is determined by forces described in the model. So we'll talk about like this only. So let's start and let's understand what we are trying to say. So the first simplification that we'll make in our model is that all apartments are identical. So this is the first. So as I just already told you that we are talking about the two apartments, two kinds of apartment, outer ring and inner ring apartment, but we will solely be concerned with the prices of the inner ring itself. So जो हमने पहला simplification करा है वो ये है कि हम जो हमारा जो मॉडल है उसमें जितने भी अपार्टमेंट्स हैं वो सारे कैसे होंगे, आइडेंटिकल होंगे, सेम होंगे, यानी कि होमोजेनस नेचर के होंगे. Thus it will make sense to speak the price of apartments without worrying about whether the apartment have one bedroom or two bedrooms. So सारे आइडेंटिकल हैं, तो एक भी अपार्टमेंट में जितना होगा वो सेम दूसरे अपार्टमेंट्स में भी होगा. So but what determines this price? This is a question that comes into our mind. क्या इस इन अपार्टमेंट्स का प्राइस डिटरमाइन करता है? So what determines who will live in the inner ring apartment and who will live further out? What can be said about the desirability of different economic mechanisms for allocating apartments? So what concepts can be used to judge the merit of different assignments of apartments to individuals? These are all questions that we want our model to address. So हम कौन-कौन से questions discuss करने वाले हैं, address करने वाले हैं. So as you can see, I've written the questions that our model is going to get the answers of and is going to be address. Okay, so these are those questions that we are going to be addressing in our model. So before talking about these questions, we need to understand one thing that is really important, is optimization and equilibrium. So these are the two basic keywords that we are going to be talking about: optimization and your equilibrium. These are the two basic terminologies that we are going to be talking about: optimization and equilibrium. And that is really important to get talked about because this is something very basic that one should know, and the differentiation of optimization with equilibrium, how they both are different. So we will be talking about optimization and equilibrium in great detail. This optimization principle says that when you have to choose the best patterns, so word comes here, that is the key word, is choosing best patterns. Okay, so this principle talks about the best patterns of consumption that the consumer can afford. So basically people try to choose the best patterns of consumption that they can afford. So this is what the optimization principle is. So when we talk about optimization principle, it is almost tautological, so that's why I've written the word tautological here. And when we talk about the equilibrium principle, so into this principle here, the prices are going to adjust until the amount that people demand something is equal to the amount that is supplied. Very soon we will be talking about what is demand, what is supply. So demand is nothing but what the people can afford. Okay, they are willing to pay for. So that is demand, and supply is what the supplier is offering for sale to the consumers. So that is supply. So equilibrium is when you have equality between the demand and supply. We say that is nothing but is equilibrium. So these are the two principles. One is optimization, another is equilibrium. And let's see what we have else to look at here. That is, if people are free to choose their actions, it is reasonable to assume that they try to choose things they want rather the things they don't want. Of course, there are exceptions to this general principle, but they typically lie outside the domain of economic behavior. The second notion is a bit more problematic. It is at least conceivable that at any given time, people's demand and supplies are not compatible. Compatible means that they cannot be, said that what my demand is, similarly you will also demand the same thing. So demand and supplies are not compatible, and hence something must be changing. These changes may take a long time to work themselves out, and even worse, they may induce other changes that might destabilize the whole system basically. This kind of thing can happen, but it usually doesn't. In the case of apartment, we see typically a fairly stable rental price from month to month. It is this equilibrium price that we are interested in, not in how the market gets to this equilibrium or how it might change over long periods of time. So please understand what will be our focus of attention in this model will be. Here we are going to be only interested in equilibrium price, not in how the market gets to this equilibrium. Okay, so what will be the equilibrium price will only be the motive of this model to get discussed. It is worth observing that the definition used for equilibrium may be different in different models. In the case of simple market we will examine in this chapter, the demand and supply equilibrium idea will be educate for our needs, but in more general models we'll need more general definitions of equilibrium. Obviously there is when you talk about income and employment, there the equilibrium will be when the income and equilibrium are in equality. So the word equilibrium in itself says equal. So when two variables are in equality, we say the things are in equilibrium. So basically here in the market there are just two forces that exist, that is demand and supply. So basically in market there is equilibrium when the demand is equal to supply. Okay, so, and optimization is in the part of the consumers because it is about the consumption, and the consumption is a part of the consumer. Okay, so talking about this model more clearly and seeing the equilibrium and the curves and everything, so it is worth observing as I just said, but in more general models we will need more general definitions of equilibrium. As I already told you, typically equilibrium will require that the economic agents actions must be consistent with each other. So generally we'll follow the principle of ceteris paribus. This means that when we are talking about one variable, the other variables that are working in in outside the thing should remain constant. Okay, but in more journal models. Okay, how do we use these two principles to determine the answers to the questions we raised above? So the questions that we have raised here are going to be answered using these two principles only. So let's introduce ourselves with the economic concepts. So the first concept that we are going to be looking at is the demand curve. Okay, so when we are going to talk about the demand curve, let's understand. So here, to understand the demand curve, what I want you people to understand first is, so this is your concept one that we are going to be doing, the demand curve. So this is your topic and the concept one, and about the supply curve we will do in the next video. So in the first video, this is the concept one, the demand curve. So let's introduce ourselves with this thing, and then we'll move further. So talking about the demand curve, suppose that we consider all of the possible renters of the apartment. So we are in our model only. तो हमने consider कि possible renters क्या थे, यानी कौन कौन हमारे apartment का rent pay कर सकता है, and ask each of them the maximum amount that he or she would be willing to pay to rent one of the apartment. और हमने उनसे पूछा कि भाई आप कितना दे सकते हो एक apartment में रहने के लिए, because demand is all about the willingness and ability to pay. Okay, so let's start at the top. So there must be someone who is willing to pay the highest price. So when we are going to ask this uncle, let's suppose this uncle is A, this uncle is B, okay, this uncle is A, and this uncle is B, this is C. So like this, there are several uncles, and we have asked individually to all these uncles that what is the maximum amount that you are willing to pay to rent one of the apartments. So this uncle we have made in top because he said that I'm gonna be giving you the maximum and the highest price. So he's willing to pay the highest price. Perhaps this person has a lot of money. Perhaps he is perhaps he's very lazy and doesn't want to walk far or whatever. Suppose that this person is willing to pay $500 a month for an apartment. So we said that he is willing to pay $500, and this is highest and the maximum. Highest and the maximum amount is paid by Mr. A, and that is $500. So Mr. A is ready to pay us what? $500, and this is also highest and the maximum amount. Now, so if the price for apartments were $500 a month, exactly one apartment would be rented to the one person who was willing to pay that price, which is Mr. A. So Mr. A is only the person who is willing to this price, that is $500, because when we asked to B, we asked to C, they are not willing to give $500. This is a maximum that can be we asked from these three people that are there into the rental apartment who wants apartments. So suppose that the next highest price that anyone is willing to pay is $490, and this, let's suppose, is B. Okay, so I'm saying that this B is willing to pay $499. Let's suppose $499 ही pay करता है. So if I'm saying that he is willing to pay $499, then into that case, what will be the situation? So there would still be only one apartment rented. The person who was willing to pay $500 would rent an apartment, but the person who was willing to pay $490 wouldn't. And so it goes. Only one apartment would be rented if the price were $498, $497, $496, and so on, until we reach a price of $490. At that price, exactly two apartments would be rented, one to the $500 person and one to the $490 person. Similarly, two apartments would be rented until we reach the maximum price that the person with the third highest price would be willing to pay, and so on. So economists call a person's maximum willingness to pay for something that person's reservation price. So this $500 is nothing but reservation price. And what is reservation price? I want you people to understand about the reservation price. So reservation price is nothing but when a person, here in our example it is Mr. A, who is willing to pay for something maximum. So maximum जो person pay करना चाहता है is $500. हमने 4-5 लोगों को इकट्ठा किया. Maximum जो pay करना चाहता था वो $500 था, और जो lowest pay करना चाहता था वो let's suppose $490 था. So lowest या minimum जो pay कर सकता था वो क्या था? $490. So ये minimum amount है जो कोई pay करना चाहता है या pay करेगा. So minimum $490 और maximum जिसे हम reservation price भी बोलते हैं is our what? Is our $500. Okay. Okay, so moving on, at that price exactly two apartment would be rented, as I just said, that is at $490, one to the person $500 person and one to the $490 person. So about reservation price, we are going to be talking about that in other words, a person's reservation price is a price at which he or she is just indifferent between purchasing or not purchasing the good. In our example, if a person has a reservation price P, it means that he or she would be just indifferent between living in the inner ring and paying a price P and living in the outer ring. There's a number of apartments that will be rented at a given price P will just be the number of people who have a reservation price greater than or equal to P. For if the market price is P, then everyone who is willing to pay at least P for an apartment will want an apartment in the inner ring, and everyone who is not willing to pay P will choose to live in the outer ring. I hope you understand this. भाई जाहिर सी बात है, अगर हमने मैक्सिमम कितना रखा है, हमने मैक्सिमम $500 रखा है, so जाहिर सी बात है जो $500 पे कर सकता होगा, है ना, जो $500 पे कर सकता होगा, दैट इज इन आर केस इज मिस्टर ए, जो $500 पे कर सकते हैं, सो जाहिर सी बात है वही ही कहाँ रहेंगे, हमारे इनर अपार्टमेंट में रहेंगे. और जो नहीं पे कर सकते हैं, लाइक $490 वाला बंदा नहीं पे कर सकता है, सो ही हैज टू लिव इन आउटर रिंग. आई होप दिस मच इज अंडरस्टूड कि हम एक मैक्सिमम लेते हैं, मैक्सिमम को ही रिजर्वेशन प्राइस बोलते हैं. सो हियर we can plot these reservation prices in the diagram. Let me show you. So let's depict the price on the vertical axis, and the number of people who are willing to pay that price or more is depicted on the horizontal case. Here I made the demand curve for you people. So this is the maximum price that a person is willing to pay for $500, and $500 is only paid by one person. So we have joined this dot with us, and then 490 is by two people. And similarly, like as the prices are falling, the more number of people can afford it, and as the prices are increasing, like is going upward, you can see the demand is falling. So here, if you know that how to read the graph, you can easily understand that if something is going upward in the y-axis, it means increase, and when something in the y-axis is decreasing or going downward, we say it's decreasing. And when we talk about the x-axis, where we have plotted number of people, so when we are going leftward, so here we're going leftward means number of people are decreasing less and less. So when we are increasing in the y-axis, the number of people in the x-axis are decreasing. Okay, so this is what we say as downward effect, or we say it as negative effect, because here as prices are increasing, demand or number of consumers are decreasing, which means the opposite effect or maybe indirect relationship between y and the x-axis. So this is the demand curve, because if prices increases, the demand for apartment is going to surely decrease. Okay, so I hope this is going to be understood by everybody, and that's it for today. And very soon I will be coming with equilibrium and supply curve as well, and we'll be talking about the market size, and even we'll be talking about market equilibrium, and also we'll be talking about the monopolist market and the other types of market, and even we'll be discussing which way is best, which market is best, and then Pareto efficiency, which is the most important concept in your economics. We're even going to talk about that. Then after that, we'll be even compare the ways to allocate the apartment. So this model is not yet completed. Do remember this model, because continuing with this, I'm going to make you clear all your concepts of economics. Thanks for watching.